Welcome back, students. So, children, in this session, we'll be doing part second of this chapter 7th of your English reader book, Flamingo, entitled The Interview. So, children, just in a line, I would review part 1 of this chapter. In that part, Christopher Sylvester, the writer, has talked about the opinion of various literary figures from English literature, that their opinion about giving and taking an interview. And from the writer's side, he has reported in the chapter that they hate to appear in an interview. They dislike the very concept of interview. As the reporter's point of view, Christopher Sylvester has presented that reporters justify taking interviews. Reporters justify it by saying that yes, interviews should be taken because everybody comes to know about the life and the career and success mantras of the celebrities, even if one person asks it. Even if one reporter takes the interview of a celebrity and publishes it on social media, then the entire world can know about it. So interviews are useful according to Christopher Sylvester, right? So see what is there in part 2. So that's why, children, this chapter has been divided into 2 parts, because first part deals with the views of different people, views of different writers about interview, and part 2 deals with the narration of an account of interview that was held between Mukund and Umberto Eco, a very famous writer. Right? So see what is described here in this chapter. Read the very first line, that is in inverted commas. I am a professor who write novels on Sundays, Umberto Eco. What do you understand by this line? I am a professor who writes novels on Sundays. So, children, it means that Umberto Eco was a professor by profession. It means he was a teacher. He was a professor who writes novels on Sundays. We know Umberto Eco as a novelist. The world, the literary people, the people who have a taste for reading, they know the name of Umberto Eco as a novelist. In fact, he says that he is not a novelist basically. Initially, he is a professor and then something else. He considers himself, he calls himself a professor who writes novels on Sundays. On Sundays we all are free and he chooses that day to write novels. It means writing novels is the hobby of Umberto Eco. It is not his profession. His profession is that he is a professor. I hope that's clear. So, starting with the text. See what is written. The following is an extract from the interview of Umberto Eco. The interviewer is Mukund Padmanabhan from the Hindu. That is the newspaper, the Hindu. So, Mukund is the interviewer. It means Mukund would ask various awkward, simple, illogical and logical questions from Umberto Eco. Right? Umberto Eco, a professor. Umberto Eco, a professor at the University of Bologna in Italy, had already acquired a formidable reputation. About Umberto Eco, it is said by the writer that this person, Umberto Eco, as it is written, had already acquired a formidable reputation. Right? So, as a professor at the University of Bologna in Italy, the University of Bologna is there, and Umberto Eco is a professor, was a professor there. He had already acquired a formidable reputation. Formidable reputation means reputation that commands a lot of respect from people's side, that is difficult to overcome. Formidable. Okay? As a scholar for his ideas on semiotics. The writer explains that how he has gained so much of good reputation because he was a scholar for writing his ideas on semiotics. What is semiotics? Semiotics is a study of signs and symbols. Okay, so semiotics, literary interpretation, and medieval aesthetics. It means he was good at semiotics, literary interpretations, and medieval aesthetics before he turned to writing fiction. Some people become famous by writing novels. So Umberto Eco is one of them, that he became famous for writing novels. But before writing novels, Mukund is, disclosing that he was a formidable, reputed scholar for writing his ideas on semiotics, aesthetics, and literary interpretation. Right? Next line. So, literary fiction, academic texts, essays, and next as children's books, newspapers, articles. His written output is staggeringly large. I find it difficult to read, even count, even so many literary honors. That, like, what sort of writer he was? He used to write literary fiction, academic texts, essays, children's books, newspaper articles. His written output is staggeringly large and wide ranging. It means he has written staggeringly large, means one feels wonderstruck after looking at his collection of writings, that he has written so much and he has written in a such wide range. Okay, in 1980 he acquired means achieved, he acquired the equivalent of intellectual superstardom with the publication of Name of the Rose, which sold more than 10 million copies. You would see that how reputed he was, that he wrote a classic book named The Name of the Rose. He acquired stardom. We often call that this person became star overnight, rato rat star ban jana. So he became star overnight. He acquired he became a intellectual star, right? Intellectual superstar by writing a text entitled The Name of the Rose. How he became a superstar? Because it became so famous, it was so widely read by the people that more than 10 million copies were sold. Right? 10 million copies of the book Name of the Rose were sold. So that's why Christopher Sylvester has selected to publish the interview of Umberto Eco. Right? He would share his views that how interview is good, how it is bad, why should it be taken and why should it be ignored. So see, Mukund Padmanabhan would take the interview of Umberto Eco that we would start. So first is the statement of Mukund. Mukund says that the English novelist and academic David Lodge once remarked. Now David Lodge is another literary figure. Mukund is mentioning David Lodge while talking to Umberto Eco. Mukund is talking to Umberto, but he is talking about David Lodge. That David Lodge once said that I can't understand now one man can do all the things he does. He means Umberto Eco does. It means Mukund once shares the views of David Lodge. David Lodge was a famous English writer. So his views are shared by Mukund, that David is wonderstruck after looking at the writings of Umberto Eco, that how one can write all such things, how one can write such a variety of writings, how can one be such a big genius. So this is the statement that Umberto Eco catches, that Umberto Eco, of course, he must feel good at the praise done by Mukund. See what he answers. Umberto Eco says that maybe I give the impression means it may look outwardly, maybe I give the impression of doing many things, but in the end I am convinced I am always doing the same thing. So here Eco says that means I may give the impression means people may think of me that I am doing several things. There are some people who are actually something and their impression is something else. So eco is asking that people may talk about me that I do this, I do that, I do a lot many things, I write very good literature, but in the end I am convinced that, means Umberto Eco himself feels that he is always doing the same thing. He is always doing the same thing. What? Mukund asked, which is, it means what thing you are doing? Umberto Eco answers, now that is more difficult to explain. It means it is very difficult to explain what I do. I have some philosophical interests and I pursue them. It means I work on them. I pursue them through my academic work and my novels. Even my books for children are about non-violence and peace. You see, the same bunch of ethical, philosophical interests. So Umberto Eco answers here that I don't do anything extraordinary. So it is all about the people's thinking, people's perspective, that what they think about me. So it is difficult to explain what I do, but yes, I have some philosophical interest. It means Umberto Eco was interested in philosophical matters and he used to include his philosophical thinking in his academic works and his novels. So simply he says that even he has written children's literature also. Children's literature means the books that are meant for the reading of children. So his books for children are about non-violence and peace. It means Umberto Eco was a sort of writer, was a kind of writer who promoted peace in his writings, peace and non-violence. And then I have a secret. Did you know what will happen if you eliminate the empty spaces from the universe? Eliminate the empty spaces in all the atoms, the universe will become as big as my fist. He says that if you remove all the empty spaces from the universe, it would become as big as my fist. It means he actually says that if empty spaces, it means if the time that we waste is removed from the universe, so it would look very small. Like, people waste a lot of time, they involve themselves in a lot of useful things that are actually not meant for anything, that are actually not worth. So Umberto Eco here says that if you eliminate this empty space from the universe, so it would look as big as his fist. So he is probably talking his tongue in cheek. So see what he says on the next page. That similarly, we have a lot of empty spaces in our lives. So children, what I told you, exactly the same thing he is talking of. That similarly, like in the same manner, we all have a lot of empty space in our lives. I call them interstices. It is not intersectus, it is, I call them interstices. Say you are coming over to my place. You are in an elevator and while you are coming up, I am waiting for you. This is an interstice, an empty space. It means I am wasting my time. I work in empty spaces. So very important line that he talks of, he says that I work in empty spaces. I'll explain it, just let me finish this paragraph. While waiting for you, for your elevator to come up from the first to the third floor, I have already written an article, and he laughs after that, right? So see what he says here. He says that while I was waiting for you to for your elevator to come up from the first to the third floor, I have already written an article. It means he shows his interests in writing. See, children, suppose we are waiting for somebody, suppose we are waiting for our friend. Much of our household work is pending, right? We are waiting for our friend and we are going to the door, we are going to the door to check if he has come or not after every 5 minutes. Suppose the friend is late, so he or she must have been involved in some other work, that's why the person is late, and we are going after every 5 minutes to check whether he has come or not. So this is called empty space. So a lot of empty space is there in the lives of all of us. Umberto Eco here explains in a beautiful manner that this is what I called empty space. It means people waste a lot of time. But if you talk of me, it means if you talk of Umberto Eco, I don't waste time. I fill that empty space by writing something. So see, he says that जितनी देर में तुम फर्स्ट फ्लोर से थर्ड फ्लोर तक अब एलिवेटर से आओगे, इट मीन्स हार्डली 1 or 2 minutes, राइट? जितनी देर में आप फर्स्ट से थर्ड फ्लोर तक पहुंचोगे उतनी देर में मैं एक आर्टिकल लिख दूंगा. इट मीन्स ही इज so much interested in writing. He is such an academician that he can write an article in just a few minutes. He simply wants to convey people that he never wastes time, right? So I hope that's clear. So see what Mukund says after that. Mukund says that not everyone can do that, of course. That is very obvious. Everybody has not got that much quality of writing literature, or everybody is not interested in writing literature. Mukund says that everyone cannot do that. It means it is not everybody's cup of tea. Your non-fictional writing, your scholarly work has a certain playful and personal quality about it. It means he is praising Umberto Eco very deeply, that your non-fictional writing, your scholarly work has a certain playful and personal quality. It means you have a distinct quality that is not there in anyone else. What is that? It is a marked departure. Marked departure means it is far different. It is very different from a regular academic style. So, Umberto Eco is praised by Mukund by saying that he writes in such a good manner that it is a marked departure. Marked departure means it is far different from other writers, okay, which is invariably depersonalized and often dry and boring. It means Mukund here is trying to do buttering with Umberto Eco and telling him that it goes without saying that other people often write dry and boring novels, dry and boring texts. He is paying a compliment to Umberto Eco that your writings are different because you write interesting texts. Okay. Next he says, how you consciously adopted an informal approach, or is it something just came naturally to you? Very awkward question he asks us, that like as we ask somebody that do you do it willingly or it comes naturally. It means he is asking Umberto Eco that the approach he adopts, the informal one, does he adopt it consciously? Consciously means जानबूझ के. Here consciously means जानबूझकर. Like, does he adopt it consciously or it comes naturally to him? So see the classic answer of Umberto Eco. When I presented my first doctoral dissertation in Italy, it means when he was doing his PhD, one of the professors said, scholars learn a lot of a certain subject. Scholars learn a lot of a certain subject. Then they make a lot of false hypotheses. Then they correct them. Making of false hypothesis, correcting it, and at the end they put the conclusions. You, on the contrary, told the story of your research, even including your trials and errors. At the same time, he recognized I was right and went on to publish my dissertations as a book, which meant he appreciated it. So see children, he says here that on the contrary, it means Mukund on the contrary told the story of his research. He tells about himself that when he presented his dissertation during his PhD, one of the professors said that scholars learn a lot of a certain subject. That scholars means the people who pursue PhD, they learn a lot about a particular topic. Okay, and then they make a lot of false hypotheses. A hypothesis is made, then it is tested whether that is null hypothesis or that is the right one. So then they correct it and then they put the conclusions. It means Umberto Eco is probably hinting to Mukund that you already know what I am going to say. You can easily predict that. Even then, you ask it willingly, you ask it intentionally, right? He says that at the same time he recognized I was right and went to publish my dissertation as a book, which meant he appreciated it. It means he says that his book was highly appreciated by his professor. Okay, next paragraph. This is again the statement by Umberto Eco in continuation. He says that at that point I was the age of 22. It means he was so young when he wrote his PhD thesis. I understood scholarly books should be written the way I had done. It means he is doing self praise that he knew how to write a scholarly book. He knew how to jot down the content for a scholarly book by telling the story of the research. This is why my essays always have a narrative aspect, and this is why probably I started writing narratives so late at the age of 50, more or less. It means he says that, like, I did my PhD, I was doing my PhD at the age of 22, and it must have finished by by the time Umberto Eco become 23, 24, or 25, right? So the person did PhD at such a young age. That's why he has such a good flow of writing literary essays. You know, the field we are working in, we become perfect at it, we become very good at it. So does Umberto Eco. Like, he recently did his PhD, that's why he became very good at writing these literary essays. He became he established himself as a very reputed writer at a very young age, because he knew how to write it. He understood how scholarly books should be written, and that's why probably he started writing narratives. Narratives means novels. He started writing novels at the age of 50, because before that he was giving much of his time to literary aspects only. Okay, next line. I remember that my dear friend Roland Barthes was always frustrated that he was an essayist. A very famous name, personally my favorite. Roland Barthes was a very, very famous essayist, and he was not a novelist. So Umberto Eco here says that one of my dear friends always remained frustrated, always remained unhappy, always remained depressed due to the fact that he was an essayist and not a novelist. You know, Roland Barthes wanted to become a novelist, but writing literature comes naturally. Umberto Eco wants to say that writing literature comes very naturally. It comes from inside of us. And Roland Barthes was blessed with the talent of writing essays. He was blessed with the talent of writing essays and not novels. So it was his desire to write a novel, but he could not write any. That's why he remained frustrated. Okay? Next line. He wanted to do creative writing one day or another, but he died before he could do that. So Eco says that Roland Barthes wanted to do creative writing one day. It means Roland Barthes wanted to write some novel or short story or some I would say fictional story, but he could not write and he died before that. It means it was the long lost desire of Roland Barthes to write a piece of fiction, and he died before he could do that. Right? He could do day, and so I started. So he says that that's why I started. Novels probably satisfied my taste for narration. So Mukund here says that novels probably satisfied his taste for narration. So not Mukund, sorry, Umberto Eco says that novels probably satisfied his taste for narration. Right? So I hope that's clear to you till now. So next page here, Mukund further asks that, talking about novels, from being a famous academic, you went on to becoming spectacularly famous after the publication of The Name of the Rose. You have written 5 novels against many more scholarly works of non-fiction, at least more than 20 of them. Eco says over 40. It means Mukund says over 40. Among them, a seminal piece of work on semiotics. So a very famous piece of work on which topic? Semiotics. But ask most people about Umberto Eco, they will say he is a novelist. Does that bother you? Eco says yes. He will give a very sharp answer to, Mukund here. Mukund, see, he is trying to catch his nerve. He asks him that he has written a very famous novel, The Name of the Rose, and very famous creation, Name of the Rose, and he has written five novels against many more scholarly works of non-fiction. At least 20. Eco corrected, it's not 20, it's 40. Mukund further asks Umberto Eco that didn't he feel bad when people call him a novelist, because he has been into the field of writing literary aspects, scholarly books. He has been writing scholarly books. So does he feel bad when people call him a novelist? See what Eco says. Eco says that yes, because I consider myself a university professor. The reputation of a university professor may be great in the eyes of Umberto Eco. A novelist cannot earn that much. If to talk of monetary terms, a novelist, a poet, a writer cannot earn as much as a university professor. Eco says that yes, because I consider myself a university professor who writes novels on Sundays. So, a different perspective, Eco took the statement of the question of Mukund from a different perspective, saying that yes, I feel bad when people call me a novelist. Not because I want them to call me a literary writer, but because I am a professor. I am a university professor and I write novels on Sundays. Right? Very famous. He says that I write novels on Sundays. It's not a joke. I participate in academic conferences and not meaning of pen clubs and writers. I identify myself with the academic community. But okay, it means if most of the people have read only the novels, right? Laughs and shrugs here. Umberto Eco laughs and shrugs here that yes, if most of the people know me by my novels, I know that by writing novels, I reach a larger audience. It means a university professor can teach 50 students, 100 students, 500 students, 1000 students. That's enough. But a writer can reach millions of people. As I told you, 10 million books were purchased entitled The Name of the Rose. I cannot expect to have 1 million readers with stuff on semiotics. Semiotics, a study of science. Children, semiotics is such a topic which is not everybody's cup of tea. If I ask you to tell me something about semiotics, you would never be able to. If I ask you to tell me something about a novel, yes, you can tell me a few lines, I know. Okay, so semiotics, that is a study of science. SIGNS, study of signs and symbols that are used in languages. So, Umberto Eco was more concerned with semiotics, and he feels that reading semiotics is not everybody's cup of tea. That's why people don't know him as a writer of, as a doer of research in the field of semiotics. People don't know him as a scholar because they cannot understand semiotics, they cannot read about semiotics, right? So people know him as a novelist because reading novels is a very easy task. Millions of people can do that. If a group of 100 is there, I can bet upon it, hardly 1 out of 100 people would be able to tell me a line on semiotics. Even not 1 out of 100, I would say 1 out of 3 to 400 people hardly would be able to tell something about the other on semiotics. But yes, about 50% of the crowd of 400, about 200 students out of 400 can tell me something about what a novel is, what a short story is, why we read novels, why we read short stories, right? That's what Umberto Eco says that. Further, Mukund asks him, which brings me to my next question. The Name of the Rose is a very serious novel. It's a detective yarn at one level. So it's a detective yarn at one level if we see, but it also delves into metaphysics, theology, and medieval history. Yet it enjoyed a huge mass audience. Were you puzzled at all by this? An awkward question. Children, see, I told you in the beginning that they ask awkward question. He says that on the one hand, it is a type of detective fiction. The Name of the Rose is a type of detective fiction. On the other hand, it also delves into metaphysics, theology, and medieval history. Yet it enjoyed a huge mass audience, means it includes theology, metaphysics, medieval history. So many tough themes were there in The Name of the Rose novel. Then how it became so famous? Like, it was very difficult thing. Umberto Eco says that people don't read difficult things. Name of the Rose was also a very difficult novel. Why people purchased it in bulk? Why so many copies? Why 10 million copies were sold? Were you puzzled at all this? Umberto Eco says that no, journalists are puzzled, and sometimes publishers. And this is because journalists and publishers believe that people like trash. You know, Umberto Eco is now becoming a bit harsh now and says that journalist means people like Mukund are puzzled. He is calling Mukund as a nonsense. He's saying that journalists are puzzled, and sometimes the publishers who publish books, are also puzzled. And this is because both these categories, journalists and publishers, consider that people like nonsense stuff for reading. People like very easy, very low level work for reading, and don't like don't like difficult reading experiences. You know, consider there are 6 billion people on this planet. Consider means just imagine that there are 6 billion people on this planet, and The Name of the Rose sold between 10 to 15 million copies. See, there are 6 billion people. He is supposing 6 billion people, and The Name of the Rose, this book sold 10 to 15 million copies, a big number. So in a way, I reached only a small percentage of readers. 6 billion people are there in total, and how many people read those? Like 10 million copies were sold, and suppose some people borrowed it, so he was able to reach 15 billion people only. So he is talking with his tongue in his cheek, right? 15 billion copies only. So he further says that I was able to reach a small percentage of readers. Very small, in fact, like 6 billion total people and 15 billion people read his novel The Name of the Rose. But it is exactly these kinds of readers who don't want easy experiences. So Umberto Eco is favoring readers here. He says that these are the people who don't want easy experiences. It means these are the readers who want to read difficult books, or at least don't always want this. I myself at 9 p.m. after dinner watch television and want to see like either Myanmar Vice or Emergency Room. I enjoyed it and I need it, but not all day. So here he says that I don't say that you should not watch TV or you should not spend leisure time. I myself watch 2 programs on TV, that is Miami Vice or either I see Emergency Room, and I enjoyed watching these TV serials. So Umberto Eco here is not asking us to not to waste even a single minute. He asks us, fill your empty time. That don't waste time. कि बैठे मत रहो मुंह उठा के, do something at least. Watch TV, watch cinema, like read novels, read literature, do something. Right? See, what is the final statement by Mukund? He says, could the huge success of the novel have anything to do with the fact that it dealt with the period of medieval history? Again, I would say a nonsense question he asks. So he here asks that the novel or The Name of the Rose became very much famous because it deals with the period of medieval history. See, because it deals with the period of medieval history. Umberto Eco says that's possible. He is not in a mood to argue with this rubbish now. He says that that's possible. But let me tell you another story, because I often tell stories like a Chinese wise man. Chinese wise man often tell stories, he says, and I would like to tell you another story. What is that? My American publisher said while she loved my book, she didn't expect to sell more than 3,000 copies in a country where nobody has seen a cathedral or studies Latin. Seen a cathedral is considered an unusual thing, and studying Latin, a very difficult language, is also considered an unusual thing. So that's why Umberto Eco here says that his American publisher once said that she loved his books. She loves reading the books written by Umberto Eco, but she did not expect to sell more than 3,000 copies. Where in that country where people are not interested in seeing a cathedral or learning Latin. So I was given an advance for 3,000 copies. It means he was not expecting that he would sell more of the copies, but in the end it sold 2 or 3 million in the US. It means only in the United States he was able to reach 2 to 3 million people. Like, such a big crowd purchased his book, and that is the dependent upon the taste of the people. Okay, final paragraph. A lot of books have been written about the medieval past before mine. Now here he is trying to bring the reporter Mukund to line. He says that, like, before his books Name of the Rose, many books related to medieval history have been written. Why are you targeting me only? I think the success of the book is a mystery. He says a very good line. He considers that the success of the book is a mystery. It means that is unpredictable. Nobody knows people's taste. People walk after one another. They ask the taste of one another. Nobody can predict it. So he says, I think if I had written the Name of the Rose 10 years earlier or 10 years later, so it wouldn't have been the same. Why it worked at the same time is a mystery. I would like to compare it with the release of a movie. So Sushant Singh Rajput's latest movie had been was ready to be released, and when the news of sudden death came, all of a sudden people jotted down their attention to the upcoming movie of Sushant Singh. So when it would be published, it may happen that the movie would be able to gather millions of views. It may earn a lot of money, right? So what is the fact there? That a movement is required. I'm not asking that a person has to die for getting his or her movie to be popular with the people. I mean to say that it is about the flow of time. Umberto Eco here says that I cannot expect that much popularity if I had written the Name of the Rose novel 10 years earlier or 10 years later. It means because I wrote it in that particular year, that's why it became famous. Because the reading public of that time was interested in reading such kind of stories. So that is just an interview conducted between Mukund and Umberto Eco, that is published by Christopher Sylvester. So he has published a lot many, but just these two parts, the interview part 1, it was general about the views of the writers and poets about the taking and giving of interview, and part 2 was the conversation, was it's written in the dialogue form that took place between Mukund and Umberto Eco, right? So I hope you must have got a good insight into the lesson after the explanation. So do leave your queries in the comment section. I will be happy to take that, and do attempt back exercise questions. So children, stay at home, stay connected. Thank you. Happy learning.